सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. Om. Okay, just a moment. Share the screen. Would one of you all please volunteer to read what we have up? 1 second, still sharing it. Can you see the screen now? It hasn't loaded. It's not loaded yet, right? Okay, let me try again. Now? Okay. So yeah, last time we still are, in fact, on the first shloka of the Gita, and we are continuing with Pujya Swamiji's wonderful commentary. So anyone wants to volunteer to read from here? No? No? This is two of you, so
I can read.
okay, please, if you can. Should I make it larger? Krishna is Arjuna's chariot. Okay.
Krishna as Arjuna's charioteer. Arjuna thus handed over his chariot, horses, and himself into Krishna's hands. Every arrow had to pass through Krishna before it reached Arjuna. When you keep Krishna, the divine factor, in front of you and do what you have to do, fighting or whatever, the arrows that come to you will have already been blunted. This is exactly what happened when Arjuna fought with Karna. Uh, Karna was considered to be the answer for Arjuna. Duryodhana had cultivated him only for that purpose alone. That there would be finally a duel between the two was a foregone conclusion. Again, except Arjuna and Krishna, nobody else was a match for Karna. Krishna, knowing all this, had very intelligently planned for that day. At first, when he knew that war was inevitable, he himself met Karna and tried to convince Karna that he should join the Pandavas by revealing to him the truth of his birth. He told Karna that he was in fact a Kaunteya, son of Kunti, like Arjuna, born of Surya. However, being the noble person that he was, Karna refused to ditch Duryodhana at the last moment. Krishna made sure that Karna made a vow that he would not kill any Pandava other than Arjuna. To extract this vow from Karna, Krishna had tutored Kunti very well. Kunti, at the behest of Krishna, went to Karna and told him the story of his birth and requested him to join the Pandavas. Again he refused, but he promised her that he would spare all her other sons except Arjuna. He told her that he would not kill any of the others, and if it came to a combat between him and Arjuna, one of them would live and she would still have five sons. He wanted nothing more than to kill Arjuna in order to show his gratitude to Duryodhana. Giving one's word was very important and was upheld, even at the cost of one's life. The two epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, are filled with situations based on someone having given his or her word. Karna had been born with kundala, earrings in his ears, and kavacha, an armor on his chest. This meant that he was gifted, that he was a very brilliant person and had the blessing of the sun. However, he had one complex. He could not accept the fact that he was not a Kshatriya. After all, I'm only the son of a chariot driver, he would say. Because he did not know who his real parents were, he always thought that he was a charioteer's son. His entire lot in life, however, was with Kshatriyas because he was brilliant in archery, having acquired his expertise from Parashurama, who was like an avatar.
So this is a very nice thing to understand, which is this vrata. When you make a certain word, it could be a promise to somebody else, it could be an oath, a sankalpa that one has taken for oneself, for anything really. Sankalpa such as I will not steal, I will not lie, I will not gossip, I will do my homework, I will exercise, whatever it may be. Once a person commits to something, sticking to it is one of the greatest sadhanas, really. This to maintain a vrata takes a tremendous amount of courage. It's not easy. There are so many circumstances in life which will pull us in different directions and make us lax. It'll make us lose. It'll make us sort of forget some of the commitments that we've taken up. But it's very important to hold on to these vritas. And one may even argue that for better or worse, perhaps Bhishma's vrata about protecting the Kuru Vamsha may not have been interpreted in the best possible manner by him. What are you protecting? Are you protecting the person sitting on the throne, or are you protecting the throne itself? Maybe Bhishma conflated the two, which is the person who's sitting on the throne is the throne, and then he could have perhaps changed his perspective a little bit. But we don't fault these individuals because, in their own sense, they were great. They were great because they were men of their words, men and women for that matter. And they did what they said, and they said what they thought. And so this conformity, karma is performed in three ways, right? Manasik, Vachik, Kaik. And so when there is conformity between each of these three karmas, one is an integrated person. An integrated person is a person of true character. And for a person like this, it is not very difficult to accomplish anything in life, including the goal of Vedanta, Mukti. So, that commitment is a great quality to aspire for. Um, and even, you know, just giving a little bit of a social commentary. Karna had a chip on his shoulder. Okay, he's one of my not so favorite characters in the Mahabharata for several reasons. The only reason I sort of overemphasize that is because of popular media that has turned Karna into some sort of comparable to Arjuna, which he is not. Okay, so that I'll put that aside. But one of the things is the Mahabharata, Ramayana, these itihasas are not so much for us to do tika of other individuals or to find character flaws in them, but to hold these itihasas in front of us, before us, like a mirror, to analyze our own character flaws. And so, all of us, I can say all of us because I don't know anyone who doesn't have these issues, but we all have some insecurity. People have different sorts of insecurities. Somebody may be insecure about their weight, somebody may be insecure about their age, somebody about their health, about their money, about their social status, whatever it is, there is some insecurity. Some insecurities can extend to family members also, that you might be worried about, oh, I don't know if my children are going to do well in life, that kind of insecurity. There's always some insecurity. And the worst kind of insecurity is the one that is centered on one's identity as an individual, because that is something that you always live with. You carry it with wherever you go. You carry it wherever you go because you go wherever you go, right? You are with yourself. And if the self itself is compromised in one's understanding, then that insecurity is a very deep, it's a deep cut. It really cuts you and it really hurts you, and it's a wound that is not easy to heal without proper knowledge of who one is. But even putting Vedanta aside, of course, at the end of the day, Vedanta is the cure to all insecurities. But even putting the Vedantic vision of the self as the Atma, as the whole to one side, one can still be, even at a functional level, secure in oneself as a person. For instance, if you are born as a certain gender, be secure in that gender. Don't try to play the or try to be somebody else other than who you are. If you're born in a certain family, if you're born in a certain household, in a certain income level, be comfortable and be proud. Take stock in what you have, in what was bequeathed to you, and that itself gives a certain level of, I would say, foundational, functional level security, which is very healthy as a person grows up. If those insecurities are set from a very young age, I've seen instances where, let's say, if you have somebody who lands up in a neighborhood where there are a lot of rich people, but that person may come from a modest background, then that insecurity stays with that person. They always feel that, oh, my dad is not so rich, or that kind of thing. There's a book called Rich Father Poor Father kind of thing. But anyway, that kind of thing happens to a person. Or for that matter, you might be surrounded by people who are much smarter. They might be excelling in a certain subject matter, or they could just be gifted students. But if you are sort of on the cusp, on the very edge of that program, and there are people who are a lot smarter, then again there's an insecurity over there. And so one has to um, be confident in who one is, but at the same time try to fit in within the foundation that one has carried and one created for oneself, if that makes sense. At a young age, I'm talking about. As you get older, of course, you can move out of your comfort zone and you can break all sorts of boundaries, intellectual, economic, whatever sorts of boundaries that you're able to break, because then there's a certain amount of maturity. But when it comes to young children who are not able to rationalize, I'm talking about kids and maybe even teenagers who don't have that rationalizing capacity, for them, these insecurities become very, very deep, deep set, and then it becomes a problem that they live with for the rest of their lives. So, always try to discuss things with children. If they don't score well in school, don't compare them against others who are doing better, because that's one of the worst things you can do. If you're a teacher, like, never ever, or a parent for that matter, never compare your child to their friends or to their siblings, because that comparison is actually a deep insult. It's a deep insult, and then they will always grow up to become very hyper competitive, and they will always see themselves as a rat, because you have to participate in this thing called the rat race. So comparison is the worst thing that one can do to a child. Karna sort of was compared by others to his Kshatriya peers, but he also compared himself. He is also to blame to a certain degree, because he compared himself to his Kshatriya peers. He was born with a certain set of talents, but he didn't really have the name to carry it, sort of. Now, I'm not saying that one shouldn't try to break out of their social strata or whatnot, but if one is able to achieve something, it should not come because one is insecure, or because one is trying to create a certain narrative around oneself. And that's what Karna was trying to do, which is he was trying to create this framework or narrative in the minds of others that, oh, I am a great Kshatriya, so what if I'm not born in so and so Kulla, if I'm not a royal, right? Like, because he was mingling with a lot of royalty, with the sons of royalty. So he had this deep insecurity that I have to prove myself to everybody that I meet. And in doing so, he befriended the wrong person, Duryodhana, and he got taken for a total ride. Duryodhana was a master manipulator. If you even look at the Gita, you even portions of the first chapter of the Gita, you will see that Duryodhana is trying to manipulate uh, Dronacharya to fight on his behalf, and to goad him towards war, and he's trying to manipulate Bhishma as well. So Duryodhana was a master manipulator. And the easiest way to manipulate a person is to find out what is their weakness or what is their insecurity. If you are able to massage that insecurity and that ego in a certain way, then you have bought the trust of that person. And that is exactly what Duryodhana did, which is he bought the trust of Karna by exploiting his insecurity and driving him against his own brothers, the Pandavas, and effectively going against Dharma. So that's why Karna was born with, they say that you play the cards with which you're born. Karna was born with very poor cards, but he didn't know how to play them either. Sometimes you can win a poker game even if you have poor cards, if you're able to play the cards right. But he couldn't do any of these things. So Karna was really both despicable, at the same time he was also pitiable. Like, it's a mix of pity and um, just somebody who's not a very pleasant person, because he's the one who actually goaded the Dhritarashtra's to engage in war with the Pandavas. And every time there was a call for peace, he would kind of like try to smash that and continue to walk the path of war. So not a great personality, to be honest, but also somebody that you can pity and have compassion for simultaneously. Any questions over here before we proceed?
So, Prashantji, was that he was jealous of Arjuna because of all these insecurities, or why was he different to the rest of the Pandavas, but he wanted to kill Arjuna?
That's a great question. Because Arjuna was, in some sense, the best amongst the Pandavas in terms of a warrior. Arjuna was the best warrior, and Karna saw himself as the best warrior. So in Shastra, there is something called Prathama Malla Nyaya. If you might have heard of it. Um, Today, if you are going to establish yourself as the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing, for instance, you don't have to box with every single 8 million people in the world. You just have to be the top contender. The current heavyweight champion, you have to call him into the ring and you have to defeat him. If you defeat him, then you are declared victorious. So amongst the Pandavas, Arjuna was the best warrior. He was the most skilled. He was the most skillful archer as well, all around. And so if Karna could show that he's better than Arjuna, then effectively he's better than everybody else. But it wouldn't be too much of an ordeal for him to show that, oh, I can fight better than Yudhishthira, for instance.
Mhm. Also, I forgot the reason why he was so loyal to Duryodhana. They were just friends, right?
Duryodhana bought his friendship through manipulation. Uh, Kar- Karna was somewhat insulted in an exhibition show. So, when students graduate, they throw a show, a performance of sorts. They sing a song, whatever it may be on stage. So these Pandavas graduated from their school of Duryodhana. Oh, no, Duryodhana, Dronacharya. The place where they learned warfare, they learned archery, they learned um, statescraft, a lot of things. Dronacharya was a good teacher. And so now they had to exhibit. It's kind of like Arangetra, right?
Mhm.
Studied Bharatanatyam, then you're going to throw a show. So their show was, let's show off our archery skills. So they were in this large stadium, and they were, throwing one after the other, like, fancy. They were putting up a show for everybody to watch. And then Karna basically landed up. Okay, this is Karna's fault. In some ways, you can see that okay, it was their fault as well, which is that they did not welcome him. That this is a stranger, and perhaps, if one is to be honest, maybe Arjuna also felt a little insecure because so far, like Arjuna was like, "Oh, I'm the best," and then suddenly there's some guy who's approximately equally as good. Though, as we see later, Arjuna is much better than Karna when it comes to warfare as well. But in that moment, it's like, oh, this guy is comparable to me. But also today, if you have an Arangetam performance, you have children. They are dancing on stage, and suddenly some random stranger from the street comes up and they start dancing along with the children. You're gonna be like, hey, get out. Not invited, not on the guest list. I don't see you over here. And if you don't go, I'm gonna have to call the cops or the bouncer. One of these two. So get out. I don't want to see you again. You're not invited. Bye bye. He crashed the party essentially. He was a gate crasher. And he wasn't supposed to be there and he started showing off. And so, of course, people were unhappy. People were like, "What are you doing? Who ordered this, right?" And so, he was embarrassed, and because he was embarrassed, Duryodhana saw that this guy he could be a useful idiot. Okay, he's
Mhm.
a useful idiot because he's useful because he's skilled. He
Mhm.
knows how to fight. He's not a Lallu. He knows how to shoot well. And he's an idiot because I can manipulate him because he has a certain ego that has been pricked. So let me manipulate this character and let me befriend him. So Duryodhana said, "Oh, these Pandavas insulted you. No. You're a great chap. You're a great warrior." And so somebody who appreciates a guy whose ego has been bruised will become their best friend. And so
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, thank you. You're my best buddy. BFF, that kind of thing." And Duryodhana also wanted to have Karna on his side against the Pandavas. It was very manipulative tactic. But only royals who owned a piece of land, who were noblemen, were allowed to participate. So what Duryodhana did is he said that, okay, I'm going to give you a small piece of land, so you become the king of that tiny little useless kingdom somewhere on the side that nobody visits.
Mm-hmm.
So then he gave him this title of, okay, now you are a landowner, and therefore you are able to participate, and therefore you can show up to these Pandavas, and therefore. And so this Karna became his lapdog. He became a very loyal follower of Duryodhana. Wherever Duryodhana went, he would follow. And whatever Duryodhana's bad tendencies were, Karna amplified. Whatever Duryodhana's decent tendencies were, Karna basically did not help Duryodhana become a better person. A friend is not a friend if they bring out the worst in you. A friend is only a friend who stops you and says that, hey, stupid, don't do that. Very, very bad idea. Get back here. Right, so friends don't help each other become worse individuals over time. Friends help each other become better individuals. And both Duryodhana and Karna had a very toxic friendship because they brought out the worst in each other. And so
Mm-hmm.
they were not really friends, but they were like friends with benefits in a platonic way, but in a very weird way.
Mm-hmm.
They try to basically use each other. But Karna didn't try to use Duryodhana as much as he got used.
Mm-hmm.
Duryodhana was the guy who used Karna, but Karna thought that he's using Duryodhana by gaining this title and other things, but he didn't realize that he's being manipulated. So,
Mm-hmm.
very silly chap.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem, yeah. Would you like to read the next section?
Yeah, sure. Parshurama's curse on Karna. Parshurama had made a vow that he would never teach a Kshatriya because of some problems he had with them as a child. In fact, he had made a vow to destroy them, and he did destroy a lot of Kshatriyas. A man of great powers, he existed even at the time of Rama, with whom he had a verbal battle. Karna went to Parshurama as a Brahmana and learned archery from him. One day, Parshurama was sleeping with his head on Karna's lap. A big insect came along and bit Karna. Although the wound was bleeding profusely, Karna would not disturb his guru's rest. Feeling the wetness of the blood, Parshurama woke up. Seeing the blood, he knew that Karna could not be a Brahmana. Had he been, he would have made a great hue and cry over the sight of his own blood. Because Karna was able to stand the pain and the sight of the blood, Parshurama was prompted to ask, "Who are you? Tell me the truth." Parshurama had vowed to teach no one other than a Brahmana, and now Karna was forced to admit that he was not a Brahmana. Having been deceived by Karna in this way, Parshurama cursed him. All that I have taught you will not be available to you at the time of need. You will forget all the mantras. These mantras were, in fact, the guided missiles Karna needed in battle. Karna later obtained another missile by the name Shakti for a one time use from Lord Indra in return for the Kavacha and the Kundalas when Lord Indra came in the disguise of Brahmana and asked for them. True to his reputation, he would not deny anything that anyone asked as dana, and he had gifted them away. But he had obtained this ashtra called Shakti from Lord Indra, and he had reserved it for using it on Arjuna. And even Arjuna would have been powerless against this astra. Krishna knew this and all the time carefully avoided the duel between Arjuna and Karna as long as Karna had it with him. He arranged for a situation where Karna had to use it against Ghatotkacha, Bhima's son. Thus, by careful planning, Krishna saved Arjuna from the Shakti. Karna still had the serpent missile, Naga Astra, which he had also reserved to use against Arjuna. And use it he did. When finally Karna faced Arjuna in the duel, he used it. It was coming right from Arjuna's head, right for Arjuna's head. Because Arjuna had no answer for Karna's Nagastra, it looked as though he would surely die. For a Nagastra, a Garuda Astra, an eagle missile is required. Only an eagle can take care of a serpent. What did Krishna do? He pressed the chariot so that it went down the few inches needed for the arrow to hit Arjuna's crown and not his head. To lose his crown was a great shame for Arjuna because he was no mean fighter, but at least his head was saved by Krishna's intervention. Krishna did not fight, he only pressed the chariot down. Stories such as these show the play of Daiva, the unknown factor in any situation. During the war, Arjuna kept this factor in front of him in the form of Krishna, his driver, and thereby saved himself. Everyone's life is a battle. With the awareness that Krishna, in other words, the Lord, is always with you, everything becomes easier. Arjuna did this and it saved him all the way. There were many occasions like this one, either before, during, or after the war, when Krishna's presence as the unknown factor made significant difference in the lives of the Pandavas. The blind Dhritarashtra knew that war had been declared. Sanjaya had just returned from the war front carrying the news that Bhishma had fallen on the 10th day of the war. Dhritarashtra was shocked at the news and, after lamenting the fall of Bhishma, requested Sanjaya to tell him everything in detail that had happened after the war had been started. This request forms the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. This dialogue, called Bhagavad Gita, occurred at the beginning before the war actually started, and this dialogue was reported verbatim by Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra was not only visually blind, but he was blind in his thinking also, as can be seen in the first verse itself.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to unpack here. So interestingly, the Gita was narrated, of course, before the Yuddha started. We know that Krishna Bhagavan speaking to Arjuna, and then the war commenced afterwards. But it was captured by Sanjay in real time, but it was only conveyed 10 days after the war started to Dhritarashtra. That is why the first shloka begins in past tense. Kimu karvata? Like, what did they do? Kya kiya? Not rahe, or what are they about to do? What did they do? Tell me. For 10 days, he didn't have the courage to ask. He was like, I don't want to know. Sometimes you don't want to know the truth, because the truth is hurtful. And when he finally found out that, okay, this all happened, it was hurtful only to him. But yeah, it took 10 days for him to ask the question, what did they do in the battlefield? Did they actually fight or not? And in 10 days, a lot of things happened because the battle lasted for 18 days. Um, this is what else is there to question. Okay, interesting. So again, like if your Kshatriyas by nature are supposed to be very brave and able to withstand pain. So that sort of gave away Karna as a player. It's very interesting that you can't deceive your guru and expect to gain knowledge from them because that knowledge will not be of no use. When you're supposed to use that knowledge, it will not be knowledge; it will just be information, and therefore it will not bring about any transformation. Even when it comes to Vedanta, knowledge that is gained from the guru has a transformative capacity. But it's not just studying from a guru, but it is to take one's guru as a guru. And the sweetness of that knowledge is very different. It is very efficacious and it's tough to explain. But that is why, like in the case of Karna, like he was able to learn some of the rote skills, but they didn't really serve him well when he needed it. Because knowledge is that which comes to recollection at the time of need. If it doesn't come to you at the time of need, what's the point? You study for an exam the entire year, but only at the exam time you forget. But every other day you remember. But when you're supposed to give the exam, you go blank. There's no point. So that's what happened to Karna over here. And very interesting backgrounds over here about what is Daiva, how it impacts you. You keep Bhagwan in the forefront. Keep Bhagwan in the center of everything that you do. And you will find that things are happening without much intervention of yours. But things are just happening and you seem to have a protective field around you of sorts. Where a lot of life's problems don't either they don't impact you or they don't adversely affect you, one way or the other. Sometimes you could be impacted, or at other times you may be impacted, but it may not be impactful enough to you as a person. But if the same thing happened to somebody else, they might have been crushed. So that is also Deva. So Deva works in both ways. It fends off the issue, or it gives us the capacity to withstand the issue as well. So we don't know which one is playing out in our lives at different times, but as long as one's Krupa is there, Ishvara's Krupa is there, this Deva uh, can be felt in one's life, as felt by Arjuna here as well, in a very real way. Any questions here?
So I'll tell you, Prashantji, when I was young and I watched the Mahabharata, right, I really liked Karna's character, because I felt that most of the time there were a lot of instances like with Parshurama and the Kavach Kundal incidents that he life was not fair for him just because he didn't know who he was, and every time he to um, tried to show the world what he was, but it was not fair that things didn't go right because of his birth and the way he was. So I don't know why, but growing up, I liked Karna's character a lot, because I felt that even when he fought the war, he was just being loyal to his friend, and he was doing and using his skills to what is needed. And that's what is in today's world, right? Like if a soldier goes on a war just because that's his duty, you cannot say that it's wrong. He's doing what he knows he has to do for his country. So sometimes it's a clash for me, um, to consider him as a person without dharma.
No person is without dharma, for sure. Even Biden is not without dharma for that matter. But everybody has some good in them, and
Mhm.
it pays to be able to see the good in different people. So that's a good thing. But when you aggregate the qualities of a person together and then you put them on balance, he seemed to be leaning on the side of adharma, on balance. Whereas on balance, Arjuna seemed to be leaning on the side of dharma, though they both had their own character flaws. For
Mhm.
example, at the end of Mahabharata, as all of the Pandavas are dying, each of them is guilty of some form of vanity. And,
Mhm.
so as they are ascending the mountain, one by one they fall off and they die. And Arjuna's vanity was he was proud. He was
Mhm.
proud of his. He was a vain, a lot of vanity about his archery skills and such.
Mhm.
Everybody has some good qualities and some bad qualities, but on average, like Karna's qualities were somewhat negative because he tried to really impose upon other people to prove himself. Like today
Mhm.
also, let's say if you're investing in a war, but if you've not been through the military and you just show up in a war, you'll not be welcome over there because you're a loose cannon. It's hard to know which side you belong to. Whether you have the right training, whether you don't, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Plus things such as like he was so insecure and he wanted knowledge. He wanted to be a great kshatriya, but then he deceived his guru also. He lied to his guru, right? He lied to Parshurama that, oh, I am actually a brahmana. So then what knowledge will you receive if you're going to lie to your teacher about who you are? And so his whole
Did
life
he, did he lie, or he didn't know at that time?
he lied.
He
He
lied.
lied because he disguised himself as a brahmana. But he knew that he's not a brahmana because he was a Sutaputra. He was a son of a charioteer. That cannot be a brahmana. So he lied. And then again, this thing about like suddenly showing up and trying to supersede the Pandavas at their own graduation ceremony, and just
Mhm.
basically rubbing people the wrong way and always being insecure and always being sort of even this whole incident about the mistreatment of Draupadi in the Sabha.
Mhm.
Karna was one of the
Yeah.
main characters who was responsible for it as well. So there was a lot of nastiness to him also, and he was not, he was never supporting dharma. He was always trying to show up to the Pandavas and try to one up.
Oh, okay.
That insecurity just made him make very bad decisions, and it made him give very bad advice to the people who were close to him. So,
Mm.
let's put it this way: you would never want a friend like Karna, because if you are about to do something stupid, Karna will be the first person to encourage you to do it.
Mm.
And so that the loyalty was there, but it's more like, what, one can ask: was he truly loyal to Duryodhana, or did he really look up to Duryodhana the way? Again, I'm not being mean or anything about it, but it's like today, if you have a guard dog who's loyal to you because you fed them scraps of food, and so of course you earned their loyalty. Was it because he felt obligated to what Duryodhana did for him by giving him a title, by allowing him to participate in these royal
Mm.
functions and things like that? So it's hard to say that. And if you do some further analysis also, because I I can give real life examples of people, but I'm not trying to incriminate anyone. So, but let's put it this way: I know somebody who's very OCD about their disciplines, but they see maintaining a certain discipline, even a religious discipline, as a form of pride, because it gives them something to be proud of themselves, as opposed to for the very sake of the thing that they are trying to accomplish. It's kind of
Mm. Mm.
this is what makes me feel good about myself, not
Mm.
the fact that this is what I'm doing is right, even if it ends up being right for that matter. So
Mm.
in that sense, like, Karna was very proud of himself as Danveer. They call him Danveer Karna.
Mm.
Somebody who used to be very charitable. And so it would almost be hurting his ego that, oh, how can I not be a charitable person? Of course, I have to part with what was given to me, because look, I don't have so much, but I'm still ready to give everything. So again, like, if one does a certain analysis of Karna, you see that his decisions were not very good, because if he was truly a very ethical person, then you would wonder that how could he mistreat some, Draupadi, for instance? How
Mm.
could he turn down the peace request made by Krishna when he came as an emissary to Dhritarashtra's court? How could he constantly want to, like, establish his own identity and things like that?
Mm.
थोड़ा गड़बड़ है वो like today, if I had a parent, I was a parent, and if I had a child who had a friend like Karna, it'd be like, stay away from that guy. Something seems off over here.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Thank
But
you.
but you pity the guy. Like, I pity him, but I don't I don't sympathize with him so much as I pity him, because
Mhm.
like, he was not given. He was There was the circumstances under which he was born were very unfavorable to a person growing comfortably. So it is almost like he had very little choice to become the person that he became, but he did not have zero choice. It's like
Mhm.
cards were very stacked against him, but every event he could have done something to make himself a better person. But
Mm.
he chose to be worse than he could have been, and every choice made him a worse person. You
Mhm.
know, other instances is where, if you look at Ramayana, Ram Bhagwan had to go through so many hardships. Sita Ma had to go through so many hardships. The Pandavas in the forest had to go through many hardships. But these hardships made them better people, it made them mature. Whereas the hardships that Karna had to face made him a bitter person, it made him a jealous person, it made him an insecure person.
Mm.
So the starting capital that Karna was dealt with was poor, but the blueprint that he was born with as a person, as a manovritti that he had, was also poor. And that did not enable him to have a growth mindset. He
Mhm.
became worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right about the fact that you can admire something in everyone, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we let me see how long this section is. Okay, so we'll do this one section, then we'll close for the week with Rash's questions. Who wants to read? Anyone can read. Would you like to continue, perhaps?
Yeah, that's fine. Dhritarashtra's question. Sanjaya was sitting in the palace in Hastinapura in front of Dhritarashtra, who asked the question, what happened between the Pandavas and my people at Kurukshetra? As the narrator of Gita, Sanjaya had been given the power by Vyasa to see and hear what was taking place elsewhere. Although Dhritarashtra was the oldest, most revered person in the family, he was nursing a jealousy towards the Pandavas because they were sons of his younger brother Pandu, who ruled the kingdom, instead of himself due to his blindness. Such complexes do not easily disappear. It is important to note that the word dharma is the first word of the Gita. If you protect dharma, dharma will protect you. Dharmo rakshati rakshita. But this is not the case with things like money. The money you protect may protect you in a time of need, but it can also attract bandits and muggers. But when dharma is protected, it does protect you. To protect dharma is to live dharma, and for a kshatriya to live dharma, he must do what is to be done. To do what is to be done leads to moksha. This is why dharma is placed first among the four purusharthas, human ends or pursuits: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. In fact, the order is more accurately reflected as artha, kama, dharma, and moksha, in keeping with the person's natural tendency to go for security and pleasure. Artha and kama first, but dharma is placed first because of its importance.
This we had spoken about, I think, as we were doing introduction to Vedanta. Some of you might remember that, in one instance it's like Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha, but then it's like Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, which is the right order. And
Hmm.
recap it, take it. If you're starting off like from scratch, Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha is the
Hmm.
order of priority for most people because that's how they move about in life. In
Hmm.
some majority, it is Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And then eventually, again, this order flips where you see it's actually Moksha is first in order because whatever you do, including Dharma, is for the sake of Mukti. So it's Dharma, the Moksha, Dharma, and Artha, Kama come afterwards. And finally, there is only Moksha.
Mhm.
Then after that, there is not even moksha because you realize that it's not really a pursuit. I am already free, so what is there to pursue? So once the goal has been reached, all of the purusharthas drop away. They are no longer, um, they don't exist anymore. A pursuit only exists as long as there is a seeker and a sought. The moment I have sought what I was seeking, the seeking is ending. Right? It ends. And when the seeking ends, then there is no purushartha, there's no pursuit anymore. There's no action required to accomplish that end anymore. And therefore the purusharthas get sublated. They resolve into oneself.
Mhm.
Very beautiful, the journey of a sadhaka. We can talk about it a little bit more as well. But yeah, you know, not to give that crude example, but again, I just had a thought about, talking about Karna. The way, how human beings, cavemen, long time back when we had just invented the fire and we were learning how to sort of like fend for ourselves and hunters and gatherers and things like that. Um, our natural enemies were the wolves because wolves would come and attack us and then they would kind of like steal some of the food that we've gathered and whatnot. And so humans had to find a way to protect themselves from wolves. And so that is how the domesticated dog was essentially born. The dog is an evolution of of the wolf. It's a sort of like an offshoot of the wolf. But what happened is human beings started feeding them scraps of meat or whatever it is that they were cooking around the fire. And so those creatures, those early wolves, let's call them proto wolves, came to the human beings for warmth and for the scraps of food that humans were able to provide to them. And in exchange for that, they found that, okay, look, I don't need to go hunt for food anymore because these human buddies of mine are giving it to me. So let me stick around with them. And they have a nice little warm fire. And so what humans got in exchange was when it was cold in the caves at night, they would snuggle with the doggies and they would sleep with them. And that's how dogs and humans became best friends. And when the wolves would come at night, the dogs would bark loudly. So the dogs who were an offshoot of the wolves themselves became enemies of the wolves and became friends of the humans. because the human did them a service, which is provide scraps of food. So one has to ensure, and now I'm not saying dogs are bad. I love dogs. They're lovely creatures. But over number of generations, we have to recognize that are we loyal to somebody because they are nice to us, period, or because they need us for some reason and they fed us scraps of food. And that's how loyalty can get misplaced. Sometimes a person can give us what we are looking for, and sometimes that giving what we're looking for can also be a case of somebody massaging my ego, knowing that this is the place where I can get pricked. And if I massage the person in this place, that person will be mine forever. And they will be they will do my bidding, whatever I expect them to do. And that is something very similar that happened to Karna as well. Just going back to the psychology. And so never ever feel obligated to a person in life if they've done you a favor for the wrong reason. If they've done it knowing that this is a way to earn somebody's service or loyalty, then think twice about being indebted to such a person. Don't take the debt in the first place, because then you will be loyal to the wrong cause. Many politicians become loyal this way. Simple example. Some of you may remember this. I remember as I was growing up in the 90s. Amitabh Bachchan, right? He was loyal to one political party. I forget what. He was also initially loyal to the Congress party at some point because he and Rajiv Gandhi were friends. And then I think his wife became loyal to what is the party she's working with right now? I don't even know. But you know, don't allow somebody to do a favor to you to the point where you become indebted to them, and then you start supporting the wrong cause. So this lesson from Karna's life. Okay, so we'll close off and meet next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Namaste.
Namaste.